All right, statewide agreed upon procedures. So what we're going to talk about today is the true value. Of course, if we're talking about value, there's got to be a calculation, so we include that also. And we're basically going to go over, I don't need to hit internal controls really hard because we've talked a lot about them yesterday and today. We're going to go over the statewide AUPs for year 5. This is what I wanted to do. Who was it who talked about how we have intentions and they don't always come out right? So my intention was to have them posted in October on our website and have it all finalized, but the reason they're not there is right here. You're looking at her throw tomatoes. It's because I just couldn't get it done in time and have it the way I want it for you. But we're going to go over and talk about what those are very briefly. The Certified Fraud Examiner's report to the nation. I'm going to hit some highlights of that, and we're going to spend a lot of our time talking about frauds in Louisiana. So let's start with, and I am so glad that this is being reinforced because y'all are going to go home and have these slides memorized. But this is my soapbox for the year, okay? Solving common audit findings. And the thing that we realized, almost all our speakers have talked about this, but what we're worried about in the Legislative Auditor's Office is why so many findings and why are they repeat findings? And we feel, I'm going to tell you, we feel like we have something to do with that. Like we're part of helping you to solve that. We really do. And we are in the process right now of developing some resources to help you. So we're going to have like a toolkit for every one of these findings and give you all kinds of different resources to help solve it, from a long 9-page narrative, should you know nothing about it, to a PowerPoint, to some video conversations with some people, to help you, all kinds of resources. We've got our legal FAQs, put them all in one place. So when you're struggling with the Budget Act or with, inadequate reconciliations, we were at one government and they said, I don't know how to reconcile my utility account receivable, which is in one software, with my general ledger, which is in another software. And so we're going to help with that, and we're going to deliver those resources. You saw that the top one is internal controls. So drilling down on what type of internal control findings are the most common. And if you have been like me and you've been in government long enough, you may have had a couple of these findings. I'm just up here to confess my sin, okay? And I remember these things, and when you think I'm honest, I work with honest people, but when a very wise auditor told me, Diane, honey, I like you, you're good. However, you are not having anybody review journal entries before they're posted. And I see mistakes happening when you look, I ain't going to ask you to raise your hand, but I have debited and credited the wrong account more times than I can count. Okay, that's when it's 9:30 at night and Diane, go home if you can't get your debits and credits right. But it happens. So we have had those before. And the big thing about those is statewide AUPs. This is where they're going to hit. This is where they're going to drill down for us. So what is the deal with statewide AUPs? And here's our friend, the fraud triangle. What is the one thing out of the 3 that we can control? It's the opportunity. It's the opportunity. And that's where they come in. We're trying to reduce that opportunity to commit fraud. For that. So internal controls, the big thing to remember here, it is a process. It is not a one and done event. It is a process. What does that mean? It's done by more than one persons involved, and it's done over time. It's not just like I put on my shoes for the day, I'm done. Not happening. If you like my grandson, you get him on the wrong feet, you don't lace him up. Whatever. It's not a one and done thing, right? It's a process. And all of us need to be involved. So when we look at internal controls, there's all kind of ways to slice and dice the information. And I know we have a variety of people in present and also online, different roles that we have within our governments, whether we're governing bodies, whether we're clerks, whether we're chief financial officers, whether we're head of procurement, anything like that. We have all kind of people listening today. And the thing about it is that every one of us has a role. And when you think about at your entity level, that's where our governing body comes in for our council members, the kind of controls that they have. Management has a lot of very, very strong, important role to play in internal controls. They're responsible for designing the program, right? And those of us who do the work at the process level and at the transaction level, we have our roles also in that. Soft and hard controls. This is one of my favorite slides because it makes me really, really think about things. And the thing that it makes me think about is those soft controls are much more subjective and much more qualitative, right? But they speak to a lot of what Mike Battle just spent an hour talking to us on, is those areas of those soft controls. Hard controls are what we know when we're the actual ones doing the work. Like if Edwia is writing that journal entry, I've got to review it before it's posted so that we can catch each other's mistakes and ask questions for those. There are also key compensating and secondary controls, and what's the thing about that? The best controls are the key ones, okay? That's our first choice. A lot of us have the luxury of having first choice and key controls everywhere. Some of us in smaller organizations, not so much. So we've got to go to some compensating controls, and we've got to go to those secondary controls that happen. But we have to have those. Another way to look at them, and think about this with your statewide AUPs, they're both preventive and detective. And what does that mean? The best ones are preventive, right? Like, cannot happen. Like, I do not have the user ID and password to go make a payment on the banking information if I am not a check signer. That's going to be a preventive control. I just can't do it. I don't have access. The detective controls, they're okay. They're good. They're okay. But happen after the fact. And the big thing on that, Tammy talked about bank reconciliations and things like that. They happen at the back end. Your bank reconciliation is no good when you're saying the auditor's going to come on site next week. Let's do all 12 months bank reconciliations. That is not a good detective control. It's too late. Tammy said 30 days. The law says 30 days is what you have, all that you have to challenge things that are wrong on your bank reconciliation. These are the ways that, these are more the hard controls, the ways that we carry this out, carry out the activities. And they're both, the ones that are asterisked are the ones that statewide AUPs hit on. Okay, so we don't hit on all of them. We're not ever going to hit on all of them. Y'all relax. The list is never going to grow to 25 AUPs, okay? We're going to keep it a low number, relatively low number for you. But the ones that are asterisked are the ones that the statewide AUPs hit on. And what's the big deal about that? The big deal about that is that we know that these have to be done. We know this is the right way to do it. Some of us actually are learning this like for the first time. We don't know these things. So we have to be able to carry out these things. We have to know what to do. To a lot of you that are, whether you have management oversight, a governing body, whatever your role is, you take a look at these two slides, and this is your to-do list. And then you think about a process. Just let's talk about payroll. And let's take a look at this one. You know, backup and recovery policies and procedures. Well, that is going to be so important. Why? Because at the end of January, you've got to give them W-2s. And you've got to be able to know what you paid them all year, right? So when you think about, when you take a process and go through all of these control activities, think about, do you have them all in place? Or most of them in place? Which ones don't? Because a lot of times, what we're doing is really, really good, but we can do better. I know Charlie talked about a mentor and having somebody to help you and a role model. For me, when I first got in government, I needed a role model. I need somebody who, like a lot of you in this room, that have worked in government a very long time, because I spent the first part of my career in the for-profit world. So when I went to government, I was old in years, so I looked old, right? But I'm zero in experience. And my college education was, 15 years ago. My one little class in governmental accounting. But I latched on to people in this room who helped me learn governmental accounting, who helped me learn the ropes. So that's really, really important to do there. We do all have a role in internal controls, every last one of us, I'm telling you. All of us do. The CEO and that's, we call it the chief executive, to not show, that we show favoritism to any kind of form of government, but basically they have the primary responsibility. How do they do that? They have to execute it, but what does the governing body do? The governing body has to set the parameters. They set the policies of acceptable behavior. Policies help us to know, here's how far I can go and no more. Here's how far I can go and no more. That right there is an internal control. We need those policies. We need to have good, strong policies. Why? Mike just talked about we're being a steward of public funds. And Jennifer's talked about being reasonable and necessary in your costs, right? You need parameters for that. So that's what they set. The internal auditors, for those of you, I know we have plenty governments that have them, probably not enough because there again, the budget rules and we don't have unlimited resources, but internal auditors catch things internally. They're always helping you to do better. They look at things, they're so knowledgeable. I don't have the knowledge they have, but I really want to get it one day. And they can help you just figure out how to do it better, give you recommendations for doing things better. Everyone in the organization, what's our responsibility? At our office, we have an employee handbook. Don't ask me how many pages it is. It's very long. We have to read it every year, and we have to know it. So when you're doing a job, you have to know how to do that job, and you have to do it right. So back in the day, I had my accounting procedures manual that said, here's how you process disbursements. And then I had my policies and procedures manual, and they used to be two different things. And then I got lost. I got really bad lost. So I said, you know what? They're really one. They're really one document. Starts with the policies that the governing body adopts, and then how I carry out those procedures in the procedures that I do. That was my job. That was my job. I had to do the procedures right, and I had to follow the policies. But to follow the policies, you have to know the policies. And so that book lived on my desk. Outside parties, they have to know it too. Now, let me be clear about external auditors for all of you. External auditors, by definition, cannot be part of your internal control. You can't say, I don't know how to record this transaction. I'm just going to debit this and credit that, and the auditors will catch it. That's not going to happen. Tiffany talked about materiality and a lot of other things related to an audit, right? So they are a part because we know that an audit is an effective tool, but that's all, right? Another thing is to make sure your vendors and your customers know. Why do people ask about receipts? Because you want to know that the sale was recorded. What was the story Mike Wagisback told us? He never knew if that $300 made it into the cash register. You want to know the sales recorded. All right, statewide AUPs, we have 14 of them. The ones that are bolded are where we're making changes. And don't worry, I don't have the exact language, but I'm going to tell you what the changes are. So here are what the changes are for this year. The biggest change of all is the board oversight component. Because why? I think one of the first slides I showed you on solving the common audit findings. So we want now to interject that the board has to know the status of solving the findings. So a lot of times when findings are in the finance office, the finance person might tell the CEO. Does the CEO ever tell the board? Do they ever know? They may not know. Now we want them to know. And management has to come up with that. Those of you who have never had a finding, God bless you. I mean, you're doing great, great work, and I know you work hard, hard, hard to get there. But for the rest of us in the group, management has to come up with a corrective action plan. Like, what are you going to do to fix this? Written corrective action plan. All we're saying is the board making sure that that's happening, and tell us every month, the status of solving those findings. So that's what we're doing. We realize with disbursements, now a lot are paying electronically. So in all likelihood, you have a policy that says these are the people that are authorized to sign checks. And you may say 2 signatures. Hopefully you have 2 signatures needed on your checks. And what we're saying is when you disperse electronically, because it's the same concept, money is going out of your bank account, right? So when money goes out of your bank account, is it people who are authorized to sign rather than people who are not authorized to sign, to actually physically let the money go out? And then some other things that we're going to look at. Look at 13, the last 2. We're starting to worry about cybersecurity. Y'all are too. I know you are. And it bothers us. It really does bother us. So we're just starting to add little things to make sure there. So the report to the nations, basically the thing is, look at that top one, 5% of revenues in a given year. A lot happens in government. If you just sit there and calculate 5%, typical organization loses that to fraud, that's not good. That's not good. We want to prevent that. What's happening in local governments? About 125,000. Frauds lasted about 12 months. It used to be longer. We're getting better at it. A lot through this report. And the most common detection method was tips. So in the fraud schemes, misappropriation, that's the big thing in the world where we live in. People taking money, not depositing money, assets of the government missing. At schools have hard time trying to keep up with all those laptops they're giving to kids, you know, that are a great learning tool for kids. So the ones that are bolded are ones that are statewide agreed upon procedures addressed for you. And then, you know, smaller organizations, you struggle with internal controls. And when we get those resources for you, we really want to help you. Mike Battle and his team and Judy and their team of advisors can help give you some solutions if you're struggling with this. What do you suggest for my segregation of duties? Lay it all out. Look, those people know. They're going to help you with those kinds of things. All right, most common anti-fraud things. I know that some of you can't read this, but you know, the top ones, things like, you know, the external audit, the code of conduct, the fraud hotline is 70% is a common anti-fraud thing. And so, and then we also talk about active and passive detection methods. Of course, common sense tells you the active ones result in the fraud lasting a shorter period of time and a smaller amount taken rather than the passive ones. So our fraud red flags, what are our fraudsters doing with the money? The vast majority are just living it up. You know, I just wish I could live on a millionaire's salary, but my job does not pay me $1 million. So let me see if I can find it another way, because I really like nice things and fast cars. So the most common way of fraud prevention is tips. The most common way it was detected is tips. So I'm going to start with statewide AUP number 12. Post your fraud poster. We get over 400 of these in a year. Every one of these goes by my desk. It used to be really interesting when I've only worked here a year and a half. When I first started, I thought it was really interesting. By now, I hate reading them because I really want to cry. I really want to cry. And I wish that we had unlimited resources to investigate them all. We kind of triage them. Every single one gets read by multiple people. Every single one gets investigated. I want you to know that. So keep the tips coming. Keep the tips coming. Let me tell you about Oakdale. So in Oakdale and Allen Parish, Louisiana, these are actual frauds that happen in Louisiana. Lisa was the clerk, and Lisa had some responsibilities about, she had to reconcile the bank statements monthly. She did have check signing. That's very common. It was 2 signature checks. She was responsible for those electronic transfers for payroll. A lot of us get paid now, especially payroll was the first to happen electronically. Now we're starting to pay more of our vendors that way. And she supervised AP and payroll. So let's talk about those electronic transfers. There were 2 tokens. As you know, banks are really good. They always have to stay one step ahead of the fraudster. And so they have you set up with a user ID and password. That is something you know. And then they want to have something you possess, which is a token. And the combination of those things lets you into the banking portal. So what happened with Lisa was Lisa talked to the councilwoman, who was another signer of the check, and said, look, we got to get you set up. We got the token. And she said, great. I'm not technologically savvy. You know, can you help me with? Sure. Let's go sit down. So we sit down, we log into the banking portal, and the councilwoman enters her date of birth and her social and all that to identify her. And she gets assigned the token. And Lisa said, look, I'll just hang on to the token for you, okay? And the councilwoman was like, great, this is great. And look what happened. $800,000 later. Okay? Not a good thing. So you guys can kind of tell what the problem is here. And I want to think about, so let me tell you a funny story. When I asked if I could present statewide AUPs this way to Roger Harris, who leads our investigative division, now I haven't been here long. Did I say that? And Roger said, sure, Diane, but you can only talk about what's in the public report. Well, what do I want to know? What's not public? He said, no. I can't tell you that because you're going to go tell everybody else. The grapevine. And yes, I will. So I can only go by what's in that. But my little wheels are thinking. I just have to tell you. I'm just spinning around on all these. So here are our statewide AUPs to consider. One is policies and procedures, and we have many areas in there. Are they written? Now look. I wasn't born yesterday, and I know that just having a written policy and procedure doesn't stop a fraudster, okay? They don't care where they are. They don't care what they say. They're going to keep going. So what other things do they have? And there you see our new one, the second bullet point. That's our new one that we're emphasizing. And the third one, resolving the budget to audit. Mike talked about budget to actual. I'm sitting here saying, because I've been an accountant, right? How did she post the $800,000? Like, what did she call that? You know, that's where my mind goes, right? You know, how was her budget to actual and all that stuff? I'm going to tell you more of the story because it's hilarious. And then the bank recs. So, were they being done? I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to find out the answer to that. So Lisa also in the AP process, here's what else happened. You know, and this looks like a pretty normal AP process to me. I'm pretty good with it. What I don't like is the mayor's action, because the AP clerk prints the checks and gives to the mayor, and he both approves the invoice and signs the check at the same time. Like, no. You have to put the horse before the cart, right? You got to approve first, and then you sign the disbursement. Two different actions. That's really the way to think about that. And so what happened was they were, you know, the city didn't have money. We just don't have money. So Lisa says, look, I'm going to help you. What you can do is I'll pay for that because I have $800,000, and you can, you know, reimburse me, right? And so she's paying for things that are weird to be reimbursed. Like new equipment. Now, I've got a credit card, but I wouldn't want to put $5,000 for some new equipment on my personal credit card. Like, that's just not happening. That's, look, I'll do my $60 office supply, but I won't do that. You know, so weird things are happening that don't make sense. Mike said government is complex, and it's a thinking person's thing. We always have to be thinking about that thing. So what happened? Well, lo and behold, we had inadequate documentation for that, and we had, you know, crazy things happening that shouldn't have happened. So are there written policies and procedures for purchasing, you know, and for those reimbursements? And I'm saying, why do you have that? Don't you have vendor credit accounts with your vendors? You ought not be financing things on employees' back, but we know what was happening behind the scenes, right? And then on our non-payroll disbursements, did we have all of those? So there was 13,000 was the number that had no documentation for that. That doesn't happen. I'm going to tell you a story. When I worked at Ascension School Board, because I'm so proud of Shelley. Shelley was the AP clerk, and Shelley got an email from the superintendent who said, Shelley, I need you to pay this bill, transfer this money. It didn't say Shelley. It just said, I need you to pay this bill, transfer this money. And I was so proud of Shelley, because you know what Shelley said to the superintendent who signs her paycheck? She said, I will be glad to do that, but will you send me an itemized invoice? And I'm so proud of her, because it was a fraudster. It was a fraudster. Establish, that's why we have the written policies and procedures and addressing those things, because when that kind of stuff happens, you're like, no, no, no. I don't care if you're the soup. I don't care if you're God. I need a written itemized invoice right here before I can pay it. The audit report. So we had a session about audit reports, and we know that there's a, audit reports have their limitations, right? In this case, we're looking at the City of Oakdale's audit reports, and what did it show? And I will tell you, these are signs. It's easy to say that in hindsight, but sometimes not so much when you're going through it, but it really is. When you put all the pieces together, you can really see the fraud happening. And I look at the bottom two, and I say, this is what I do with my 2-year-old grandson, and I deflect, right? It has to go over here. So now we're saying, oh, look at that police department. Look what's happening. And that utility clerk, she stole $4,000. Lisa's tab was almost $1 million. So audit reports do have their limitations on that. Don't forget, your external auditor cannot be part of your internal control. The financial statement audit is not designed to find fraud. It's designed to express an opinion on if your financial statements are materially presented in all material respects, right? Or fairly presented. So they look at a sample. They don't look at everything for those. So now, here come the statewide AUPs to your rescue. So here's how it works. Problems go from big to little. So statewide AUPs, I'm going to tell you what we're doing because it's a psychological thing. What we're trying to do is help our governments to find those parameters in which to operate, right? We're saying these are some basic things everybody needs. So what happens? You get exceptions to those. So, a lot of them don't rise to the problem of being a finding. Many of them don't. If I do not have my ethics training, then that does not rise to a financial statement finding, not a material to the financial statement numbers, right? So they're little problems. And then they get a little bit bigger, because then they become a management letter comment. And what does that mean? I always view that as a warning shot fired over the bow of the ship. I'm not going to hit your ship, but I am certainly letting you know I am around and I'm looking. And that's what the auditor is telling you. And the auditor is saying, I see this as a problem. And what is not written in a management letter comment, if you don't do anything about it, next year it could be a finding. So that's the parentheses around your management letter comment. So it starts with an AUP exception, it goes up to the level of a management letter comment, and then it goes to an audit finding. And that's pretty severe. And audit findings speak to the quality of your, Mike just did a whole session on that, the quality of what you're doing, your financial management and everything. And those who have debt outstanding, it goes to your bond rating. It goes to your bond rating. People are looking at that. So let's take a look at our ethics. Did I skip one? No. Ethics. Speaking of that, ethics. What is this? Tone at the top. That a lot of auditors have told me, Diane, we use that AUP to test tone at the top. Is that happening, getting your ethics training? Every year, calendar year, every employee, it's on the ethics, the Board of Ethics website. I had an exception one time because somebody who left in the middle of the year had not done it. So we promptly changed, and I was the most unpopular person that year, from everybody get your ethics training done in December before you leave for the Christmas holidays to everybody get your training done in January, and then you're off my list, and then I only have to get the people who are new hired all year. Okay, so very unpopular. It's okay, I can take it. When you're a government officer, finance officer, you have to be strong. I would tell my husband sometimes, he's like, well, you look nice in that today, and I said, I got my armor on today, because I have a meeting and I know that they're going to like throw things at me, so I have to be ready for that. But that's okay. So let's talk about Zachary. Zachary's an EBR parish, and what Zachary did was they paid 2 vendors $4.1 million with no contract. Now, my friend Jennifer Shea is not in the room, but I would really get brownie points with her if I could say, Jennifer, that is just leaves you wide open for all kinds of mess. okay? You need to have a contract. It protects both sides. That's why it's on the statewide AUP. That's why it's one of our statewide AUPs, because there again, we want those parameters. We want to know, because it's not clear. When do we need a contract? When do we not need a contract? You can talk about whether or not that purchase order is a contract. I would tell you, yes, it is. But of course, I'm not a lawyer. All right, so let's go to Jonesville. Jonesville's in Catahoula Parish, and we had some utility clerks. We had Leanne and Veronica. And let's look at what Leanne and Veronica had going on. They collect utility payments, and they issue the receipts. That's what you're supposed to do, and they record it in the utility software. They did have separate cash drawers. We're always pleased when we see that. And each counted her own funds, and she reconciled her own amounts to her payments recorded, and she prepared the funds for deposit. So do you see the first problem? That's improper segregation of duties, right? They didn't have any written policies and procedures for adjustments to customer accounts. You need those. You need those. There's something on the ballot about that. I had to do early voting, so about adjustments to customers' accounts. And what happened? About $94,000 was received or recorded, but it wasn't deposited in the bank over 8 months. Over 8 months. So that's why we have an answer for that. We have our SAUP on collections. Do you have that proper segregation of duties? And I will tell you this, everything needs to balance. What you collected and recorded in your cash register ties to your cash drawer, like what you have left in your cash, and what you're depositing, what went to the bank, what goes to the general ledger. It all has to tie. More than one set of eyes on it to find that is the best thing to do there. All has to tie. That's why you'll see sometimes, you used to see, and sometimes you occasionally see at stores, if you didn't get a receipt, your meal is free. That's because, that's to avoid that. It's called cash larceny when you just skim it off the top. And to have that proper segregation of duties, you want to take your money to the bank. You always do. Even if you don't, you always want to tell everybody that you do in one business day, because you don't want people to think, especially the guys that are like addicted to substances and stuff like that, who think they're going to come rob your government so they can go get their next fix. You don't want them to think you have cash here. Like, well, you don't have any money here. It gets deposited every day. It goes to the bank every day. Go somewhere else where they don't do that for that. And then you need to have them bonded or insured. So this is my to-do list right here, Ouachita Parish Clerk of Court. So what happened was Donald, he was the one who very nicely set up all of this online, where you could get an online subscription for whatever period of time you wanted to go look at the court cases and look them all up. And when you move to online, the natural thing that you do is move to payment online, right? And so what happens with payment online? Donald was very good. We've all done, well, most of us have done this. We have a PayPal account. The PayPal account was set up perfectly fine. It went from when you were the lawyer and you bought your subscription, it went into the clerk's bank account. Well, it was tied to the clerk's bank account. But if anybody knows anything about PayPal, you have to go in and physically transfer the money. Okay? And you transfer the money to an email. And what happened? He took 2/3 for you, 1/3 for me. 2/3 for you, 1/3 for me. 37% of the money did not make it into the clerk's account. Now, why is this Diane's to-do list? Because guess what? I should have the next slide blank, because I don't have an AUP for this. But I've got it on a slide of a list of things to do. So it's sitting on my desk. We need to come up with one like this. Stephen Kramer, one of our very wise advisors, said, Diane, look, he knows a lot more things than I do. He said, Diane, you have to think of PayPal as a safe, as a physical safe, and whatever controls you have over the physical safe, you need over the PayPal account. But what wasn't happening here was there was no monitoring of that. So people knew he had set that up, and you can get reports from PayPal and all that stuff. Having that access, going to look, that was the failure for that. So I am going to look at that, and then here again are their, statewide AUPs, exceptions, and their findings and their audit reports. So let's go to the 9th JDC. This is in Rapides Parish, right smack in the middle of our state. And so there was a law about seized assets, and they have to go to the DA. The DA gets those funds, and then, you know, whatever happens with the seized assets when they, you know, reach their ultimate destination. And so what happened with Marguerite, she was responsible for receiving and depositing those seized assets, recording it in the general ledger. You know, that's pretty common. She prepared checks drawn on that account, and she reconciled that account. And what happened? Almost $800,000 was not deposited. So where did the breakdown occur? What to me was interesting in this, hurts my feelings, a lawyer found it. Not an accountant, a lawyer. And how did the lawyer find it? Because he's got all these cases. This was his work, was the seized assets. And he's totaling them all up. He says, Marguerite, let me see the bank statement. And she, here you go. And they weren't close. And he found it. He found it. So, you know, and what happens in this? It's pretty bad. You know, other signs were happening too, like judgments not paid timely, sometimes years if you were waiting for this. So this is a big problem into that. And what happened? They didn't have that adequate segregation of duties. That reconciliation that the lawyer did between his cases and the bank statement, you know, not that they have time, not that it's their job, but had he showed an accountant how to do that, an accountant, that's your job. So you have to figure out what you need to reconcile to what to make sure that it's all working for that. And they did have receipts not deposited timely in multiple years. Hence Diane's soapbox, right? And the new one about board oversight. Like this was a no-brainer. You know, I'd want to say, look, you want me to come every day and take the deposit to the bank? I'll do that for you. That's got to be one of the easiest things in the world to solve. But maybe not for that, you know. And then lacking the technical knowledge on the financial statements. So what does that mean? Do people, when they get those financial statements, do they really know how to read them? Do they really know what they're saying, that budget to actual? And you know what? Mike said that's why you discuss. Many people have said, no question is a stupid question. You know, no question is stupid. It's just, I am not a stupid person. I am just not familiar with that topic. But I'm not dumb. You know, and so when you get a question like that, you answer that question because we're all learning. I hope we all continue to learn till our dying day for that. Keep asking that. Ville Platte, over there in Evangeline Parish. What happened in Ville Platte? In Ville Platte, like many places, there's an ordinance that says this is how much these people get paid. And this was what their annual salary was. In addition to the annual salary, we had some mayor and some board members getting some excess money that happened. And then we had some crazy stuff kind of happening. Vehicle allowance when you're provided a vehicle. You know, so what happened? Excess payments of $40,000 over 2 years. So now we want to look at our payroll and personnel statewide AUPs. You know, do you have written policies and procedures? We're always going to go back to that. We need those parameters. We need to know what they are. If you don't like them, to all your finance officers out here, to all your mayors out there, if they're insufficient and they're not doing what you want them to do, change them. Change them. Always keep looking at them. Finance officers, I would look at mine at least once a year, but multiple times to make sure that I was on board with those and kept them fresh in my mind for that. And so, and then looking at your travel for that and making sure that, you know, it isn't double dipping, giving you a mileage and then a mileage allowance and then getting all that. And also your attendance. We had people talk a lot about our attendance, our daily attendance, and recording that. When you earn leave, you need to record your attendance because your attendance is how you earn the leave, okay, for that. And the amounts actually need to be deducted from your balances when you take leave. That's an important step too for all of those. So their audit report did show that they had findings, and look what they had. They had repeat findings. They had repeat findings. And you know, the clerk said, We have always done this. We have always done this. And they recorded it on the W-2s. And so the thing is, they knew how to get that part right. They just didn't. You have to keep drilling down and figuring out why. What is the approval process? And you know how you find out the root cause? Ask why 5 times. Why? 5 times. And you'll get down to your root cause to figure out what's going on there. Madison Parish, oh heavens, this was a big one. I mean, this guy is poster child. He actually was listed as one of the top fraudsters, you know, in his day. And he did so many things, it isn't even funny. But a lot of what, look, don't think you can do this. He put his daughter's wedding on his credit card. Not allowed, okay? Went to jail. Really, really bad things happening here. This I could use to talk about my ethics, talk about the tone at the top. If this is your leader, what in heaven's name do you think employees are thinking they can do? Anything they want. Anything they want. So you have to stop that. But one of the biggest things that he did was a lot of crazy stuff on his credit cards. So there were credit cards issued to these people, and there's where he has his daughter's wedding and, you know, airfare for spouses and all that stuff. That's all illegal. So yes, we do have a statewide AUP for that, and it's on the credit cards. You know, and Jennifer talked about keeping those doggone things in a vault, and, you know, only a few people can access them and all this approval and all that stuff. You have to know what they are. I know that that's a way we pay. Like Amazon does not take a purchase order, and they offer low prices, so you have to have a credit card. But just make sure you have proper controls, hold people accountable. And can I tell you something? On one of these, see that bottom line? Like, I disagree with that. I don't think you need compensating controls for a missing receipt, because here's how it goes. You don't have a receipt, you didn't prove the business purpose. Ergo, it's personal. Ergo, cough up the money, Paul. And should Paul say, look, Diane, I forgot my checkbook today. Guess what? It's okay, Paul. I'm going to take it from your paycheck. Don't worry about it bringing a check, because that'll happen too. I don't have a pen. I don't have my checkbook. My spouse has a check. It's all good. I got you. I got you back. We are going to get our money one way or another. Okay, I did that to my boss, and she was missing $135. Signs my paycheck. She was missing a $135 receipt for office supplies, and the staff tried and tried to say, look, can you get us the receipt? Can you get us the receipt? And she said no, and I went to talk to her, and I said, look, I know it's a problem, and I said, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to take it out. I'm just letting you know, per the policy that you signed when you accepted the credit card, we're just going to take it out of your next check. All is good. You know, it's all good. Try to remember your receipts. Guess what? This is the person who signs my paychecks who could have fired me. Guess what she did? She went home. She dug in every purse she had, and she found that receipt and brought it back the next day. That's what I would do too. What does she need on our fraud triangle? The right motivation. That's all she needed for that. So they had a lot of problems. Let me tell you why this slide is here. Because look at these years. It is years to clean up that mess. It takes years. Today, no findings. Clean opinion and no finding. You don't want to be in this hole. You don't want to be this type of government. And then in Catahoula Parish, again, back to Catahoula, in this situation, this guy again did a lot of bad things, but one of the things he did was violate what Jason talked to us about yesterday. It is a no-no. You cannot incur debt without bond commission approval. So that's why we're looking for that, bond commission approval in a lot of ways. Now, the bad cyber attack guys are out there, so we have a statewide AUP for that basically says, just make sure. We're trying to give you guidance. We're going to give you more guidance. So heads up, one of the big things is that there is a law that says every new employee needs cybersecurity training, so you have to have it just once. So I'm going to tell you what that is on another slide, and what you're going to do is you're going to go home and you're going to start implementing that in your organizations. So when it becomes a statewide AUP, you're like, no exceptions. I know you're going to be there. So backing up your data, making sure to keep it safe. It is not a good thing to back up your data on the network, because the first thing I'm told the malware does is it goes out there and it goes and searches for your network, and it pulls all the old backups and it gets them off. And then it starts destroying your stuff, okay? So that doesn't work. You need what is called an air gap. So my original, my backup data, they have to be separated. They can't be on the same thing. We're checking for that. We're also checking for terminated employees. And lo and behold, here is the act that's requiring the cybersecurity training for that. So you can go look that up. Just protect your data. It's the law, protect your data. All day long, protect your data. Prevention of sexual harassment. I do not have a fraud story for this. I will never have a fraud story for this. But what we know is this is really real. And I know when I first took the training, I approached it with the attitude, I know what sexual harassment is. I don't need this training. I got better things to do with my time. And then I took it, and were my eyes ever opened? It was really, really open. So it's a good thing. It's good information for us. There's also, you need to have your policies on your budget. Why? So many people have talked about the importance of budgeting and the value of that tool. So what's the true value of statewide AUPs? In the handful of little bitty stories I told you, about $8.2 million. How about that? So now, not so bad, Diane. I'm going to go tighten my ship. So let's look at Diane's crystal ball and say what's happening. So we are going to look at that cybersecurity training. Okay? So this is also your to-do list. Don't you hate it like you come to hear a speaker and then they're like, she's giving me stuff to do. I got to go home and do this stuff. You know, and looking for other things. We're going to work on that online money transfer system. That's on my to-do list, okay? So that's going to be coming up, a couple of general comments, and I want to say to all of you, thank you so much. Thank you for your time these 2 days. We have absolutely enjoyed being with you. We love when we get to network with you and have all of these informal conversations. Our goal is to provide you with useful information that you can use right away. So don't hold it against me that I gave you a to-do list, okay? And then we will be sending out our CPE certificates to you by the end of the month. We've got over 1,000 of those to do, so it's going to take a little bit of time. We are also, she probably hit submit, sent you a survey. So let me tell you about this program. We have a committee that works on this program, and everything that you write in that survey is my to-do list. So this is what you asked for from the last one to this one. You said we need a break after every session, and we delivered it. You said you wanted high-quality speakers and your favorite speakers. We delivered it. You said you asked for speakers to mention very specific things, and guess what we did? To all of those speakers who spoke on that topic, they had your list of comments, and their assignment was put this in your slides. And they did it. The kind of training that you wanted, we did it. You wanted level 3, we gave it to you. This is your program. Us at the Legislative Auditor's Office, we're your servant. We're just here to do your bidding. So when you fill out that survey and you say, this is what I want, me and my team, we're going to make it happen for you. So thank you so much, and it's very, very important. We look forward to next year. So in all likelihood, our training will be in March 2023. And what we are going to feature, because we see that there's a need for it, is we're going to teach basic governmental accounting. Okay? Because we know that there's an absence of that in our state. We're going to teach basic government accounting for 4 hours. Stacy Lejeune, who's here with us today and is an accounting instructor at Nichols State, has agreed to develop that curriculum. So we're going to do basic in the spring, intermediate in the fall. She's going to develop that curriculum and deliver that for you. That's going to be great information for all of you. We're looking forward to that. I want to thank everybody who made this possible, from the Light Center for letting us use their facility, Sunflower, especially to Liz Martin, who has been out there and hadn't slept in 2 weeks to try to make sure all these details like fresh muffins and all that are delivered for you, to our presenters for all of that, and to all of you for attending. So guess what? You are armed with knowledge. Go forth and conquer.